Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Henderson.
Here.
Vice Chair Gregory. Present. Representative Spangert. Here. Brown. Here. Haley. Here. Hurlbert. Present. Lewis. Person. Railsback. Here. Sharp. Here. Thompson. Here. Walsh-Moore.
Present.
Young.
Okay, with 11 present, we have established a quorum. The Committee on Workforce Development will now go into executive session. I move that House Bill 1740 be voted due pass. And with that, I have an amendment that I'm going to offer on the bill, ending in point 01H. The amendment basically adds the language that the amount of the refund owed, if you remember, we're talking about the earnings tax in the city of St. Louis, that the amount of the refund owed with interest together with costs including. Basically, and I'm going to let Representative Dogan, if you want to step forward for a minute and tell them a little bit about that, but I think basically if you have any other to add after I get done, all we're adding is that if it gets tied up in court, they would have interest to pay too. Is that correct? Okay, so that's all we're looking to add with that amendment. With that, all those in favor of, first, discussion on the amendment. Excuse me. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none. Okay, all those in favor of adopting the House Committee Amendment number 0.01H signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You have adopted the amendment. I move we roll the amendment into a new substitute and adopt the substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You have adopted the substitute. I now move that House Committee substitute for House Bill 1740 be voted due pass. Any discussion? Seeing none.
Okay.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Henderson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gregory. Aye. Representative Spangert. No. Brown. Aye. Haley. Aye. Hurlbert. Aye. Lewis. Person. Railsback. Aye. Sharp. Aye. Thompson. Aye. Walsh-Moore.
No.
Young.
No. Three. Okay. So by your vote of 8 ayes and 3 noes, you have voted House Committee substitute for House Bill 1740 due pass. Okay. I move that House Bill 2171 be voted due pass. And with that, you have been given a committee substitute. And let me kind of go through what it is. Representative Young had brought something out in our meeting when this bill was heard. And if you look back on page 3, line 15, really that's what the change is we do not want students to be punished if their parents just will not engage with the school with the FAFSA. If you remember the bill talking about every student would have to fill out the FAFSA. And if their parents just will not engage and the school has done everything they can, we want to do that. So the free application for federal student aid under this section, the superintendent or superintendent's designee shall exempt such student from the requirement to complete or submit the application if such student is unable to complete the application because of extenuating circumstances. So basically, we're giving the superintendent or their designee the ability to exempt them from having to fill this out if we just can't get engagement there. We would not want that to be the sole reason they cannot graduate school. So with that, any discussion? Okay, yes, Representative Bangert.
Thank you. I think that's a great addition to the bill to make it even better. And I want to once again say how much I like this bill. I think it's an excellent bill, and I hope to see it cross over the finish line this year. So,
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the substitute signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You have adopted a substitute. I now move that the House Committee substitute for House Bill 2171 be voted do pass. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Henderson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gregory, Representative Spangert, Brown, Haley, Hurlbert, Lewis, Person, Railsback, Sharp, Thompson, Walshmore,
Aye.
Young.
By your vote of 11 ayes and 0 noes, you have voted House Bill 2493 do pass. That concludes our executive session. No, we got the wrong number on my sheet. Excuse me. What is it? 2171 on my sheet was the wrong number. 2171. Okay, that concludes our executive session. We will now hold a hearing on House Bill 2327, sponsored by Representative Riggs. Representative, whoa, we got one more. Yeah, we got my sheet messed up here. Okay, let me go back here. We got my sheet just a little bit messed up. Unless I've missed it here. Here we go. There we go. Okay, I got it. My fault. Excuse me. I move that House Bill 2493, sponsored by Representative Black, be voted do pass. Any discussion? Now that I've finally got it in the right order, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Henderson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gregory, Representative Spangert, Brown, Haley, Hurlbert, Lewis, Person, Railsback, Sharp, Thompson, Walshmore,
Aye.
Young.
By your vote of 10 ayes and 0 noes, you have voted House Bill 2493 do pass. That concludes our executive session. Now, we will now hold a hearing on House Bill 2327, sponsored by Representative Riggs. Representative Riggs, please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Lewis Riggs, representing 5th District, which is all of Marion, all of Shelby, and part of Monroe in northeast Missouri. Thank you for taking 3 of these up in mass today. That's a big help for me as well as y'all to wrap your minds around this. Before I start in, I just want to emphasize several different things about these. Each one of them has what I call the trademark 12-year fuse, which basically gives us both a product and a process. So each one of these task forces is designed to stick around for a while as opposed to doing one-shots, which is typically what we do. Second part of it, I have a never-ending quest for people in this chamber at some point or another to be able to serve on one of these working groups. We call them task forces. They're basically working groups. I had the honor and privilege this past year of chairing the interim committee on broadband development. And what that did was it allowed folks on that committee to basically take a deep dive into a very important subject, take a look at it from every possible angle, and I want to thank several members on this committee for participating in the town halls that we had across the state. As a result of that, we generated a 517-page report, 26 of which you can read, 491 if you're really a policy wonk you can get into. But at the same time, we're able to develop a certain level of expertise with a particular subject that is, hot button to everybody in this state, one way, shape, or form. And this is where work from anywhere comes in because of what we know about COVID. And we know that work from anywhere, remote work, whatever we call it, is going to be here to stay. But also one of my goals in presenting these bills is to basically give us the opportunity to take those deeper dives as legislators. And we all know the systemic difficulty with term limits is you get really good at something, 8 years, they show you the hatch. That's the law. That's what we do. I remember going to an NCSL conference before COVID struck and listening to a gentleman who said, well, I've been chair of this committee for 25 years. Great. How nice for you. Went up to him afterwards and said, you know, Missouri, they would have showed you the hatch after 8. It's like, what? Yeah, it's called term limits. So this is something, it's basically a structural weakness that we have as a result of term limits. We don't get to be extremely good at things quickly. And this basically is designed to shorten the learning curves in various subject matters. So Work From Anywhere deals with pandemic. We know as a result of COVID that there were several areas that were laid bare when it comes to broadband coverage. One of those was online education. Everybody gets that. Another was gaps in the remote workforce. And we're seeing it, and it's old saying, demography is destiny. Areas that had really good internet saw population increases. People that didn't. And I believe that the worst counties in the state with double-digit population loss also have a correlation effect. They have bad broadband. So this is something designed basically as a product and a process. We know that work from anywhere, remote work, whatever, is here to stay. We also knew, I surveyed OA in the height of this thing to find out, 25% of our workforce was gone. They were working from home. What was the level of satisfaction? Every department showed 90% or better job satisfaction because of the flexibility, decreased times back and forth to the office, transport, all that other good stuff that goes along with it. The problem was if you didn't have good internet, you weren't eligible to be part of the remote workforce. So what we tried to do here is basically take a look at a subject that is going to stick around for a good long time and figure out what we need to do as a state in order to get ahead of this. And I've talked to the constituents in the private sector, and I'm sure each of you has, been working from home for the last year, 2 years, and have no plans whatsoever to go back to the offices if they're not compelled to. It's a new paradigm. It happened right underneath our watch. But how do we get basically resources in front of this to get at what this means for us as a state? And we've got Houston, Missouri, basically is marketing itself as the work from anywhere destination in Missouri, because the town basically went out and said we're going to hardwire the whole thing. And they've got really good, robust internet, and they're using it as a marketing tool. The only county in my neck of the woods that showed population gain of any significance as a gig up and down for everybody in that county, with the exception of about 25 households by the end of this month. Those are the centers of gravity. Those are the folks who are going to be pulling in population for all over this country. And the question is, how do we get in front of that? How do we promote that and make sure that we're accessible? And from a workforce development standpoint, this is something that we all need to be aware of. 85-90% of your online applications now require some level of sophistication to upload a resume to Indeed or whatever job service you're dealing with. Also, folks need to understand that artificial intelligence is working through your resumes, your CVs, whatever you file. And if you don't have those things letter perfect, then good luck to you. It's never going to be seen by human eyes. So there's some things out there that are rather daunting, but at the same time, it's a challenge I think that we should be able to meet. And what this group is designed to do is basically look at this possibility from all different angles and look at what the IT infrastructure needs to be to move the cost, move this forward at an effective cost. And that would basically be studying it, recommending reports. And if you'll notice, the mechanism is these things go away for a little bit, then they come back. Why do they go away? So you can evaluate what we just saw. How do we make policy recommendations based on what we just saw? What do these reports tell us? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? So that basically is the core of what this does. I'll be happy to take any questions at this time. And thank you for your attention.
Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any witnesses here to testify in support? Seeing none. Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Anybody for informational purposes only? Representative Riggs, thank you. I'm going to stay where you're at. And at this point, we will move on to hold a hearing on House Bill 2564, also sponsored by Representative Riggs.
Deja vu, you'll see it again. So this one basically is another, and thank y'all for sitting through these. Another area where we look at the 12-year fuse, we have a process and a product, but also we're needing at this point to address what we do to basically expand existing innovation hubs throughout the state of Missouri. So we have Ag Tech in St. Louis, you have Food Science, Columbia area, you have Animal Health, Kansas City. I actually sat down in a meeting this past Friday with folks from St. Louis looking for new and improved ways to partner with them in their resource base. And we started this in 2019, and COVID struck, so it threw us in reverse gear for a couple of years. But this is something where we look around and we see all of these magnificent job opportunities from a workforce development standpoint. We're watching something happen now with the ability of our folks on our farming equipment using GPS to generate terabytes of data regarding 3,000-acre farm fields. It's down to megabytes per kernel of corn. It's an industry that basically is starting, didn't exist 5 years ago because the GPS wasn't on the equipment. So these are the types of things that we're looking at. Say, how do we develop this? How do we harness this new technology? How do we look at these innovation hubs and exciting things that they're doing? That includes international trade. And how do we expand these out into parts of Missouri that just don't have them yet? So what this does basically is takes a look, researches it, best practices, get the folks in the door who are doing it, and share with the rest of the state how they're getting this done. So I look at this as something as an opportunity for a lot of really good things that are happening in certain areas of the state to be expanded throughout the entire state. Anybody who wants to be a part of this process should be able to. That's what this task force does, is designed to basically build those bridges from folks who are doing it and doing extremely well to get it out to areas that just aren't seeing it yet. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any discussion on House Bill 2583? Representative Walsh-Moore, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, good morning, afternoon.
Afternoon.
So I'm curious, you mentioned the 12 members representing the organizations. What was the thought process behind those 12 members?
Subject matter experts who are already out there doing it. So those are the folks who can tell you, here's how we did this, here's how we started, here's how BioSDL got together over 20 years ago. Partner with Danforth Plant Science, Cortex, all the other things that are part of that ecosystem or infrastructure, when you want to call it, and say, here's how we did it, and basically walk people through the process. Here's how we can partner with you. Here are existing resources that we can work on, but here's some things down the future you need to know about, and we can make resources available to get at that in real time.
Is there any discussion, or would you be open to a discussion about kind of rotating that so that it doesn't feel sort of, we'd hate to be accused of favoritism or anything like that. Would you be open to any sort of discussion of rotating or making it more available to the public? Will these meetings be public, or?
Yeah, these task forces are open. They're basically an open book. And sure, I'm married to my wife. Happy Valentine's Day, honey. I'm not married to my bill, so any suggestions you have, I'll be glad to incorporate those and make this a better bill.
Thank you.
Representative Banger, proceed, please.
Thank you. I just had a question. The report, is it just a written report that's given to the General Assembly, or do you have like a meeting where people can come and learn about what the task force has and what they're reporting back, or how is that report presented to the General Assembly? I see here in the bill.
Yeah, it would be written just basically what we did with the interim task force. So you have the bill, basically a summary, the report, and then the supporting documentations that backs up the report. Then that would be subject to public release, transparency. And if folks wanted to have a meeting basically to discuss that, more power to them. That's not in the statute to say here's exactly how to disseminate the report, but you need to get it out there.
Yeah, I just think it'd be nice to have offer up a big meeting where people could come and, actually have the report presented to them.
Absolutely.
I mean, I could read it too, but I'm just thinking outside the box. That'd be nice to have a big meeting to share those things that you
You know,
were able to
I'll just
come
say
up
this from
with the
personal
task force.
experience, dealing with some of the people on this page. They're more than willing to share. This is something that's not a secret. This is out there. It's happening. We just need to basically bring the entire state along for the ride.
Yeah, no, I know they're out there. I just was talking about how it's reported, and I think it'd be nice to have a meeting, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any witnesses in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ross Lean with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Here to support this bill. The Chamber believes anything we can do to help improve our technology and innovation sector here in Missouri is a good thing, and we believe this task force can help do that. So happy to support.
Any discussion? Seeing none, thank you very much. Anybody else to testify in support? Anybody to testify? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Any witnesses for informational purposes? Seeing none, that will conclude our hearing on House Bill 2564. Representative Riggs, of course, you can stay there again. And we will now be holding a hearing on House Bill 2583. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you all for sticking around for the third one. So hopefully third time's a charm, then you'll see no more of me, at least for the rest of the day today. Wanted to emphasize on this one, Missouri technology backbone is something I know we're addressing with ARPA funds. We're addressing throwing huge sums of money at something that's been basically a thorn in our flesh as a state, 35, 40 years, depending on which computer system you're talking to and which department. So this basically grows out of discussions we've had over the years. Anybody who served with me on budget and saw the look on my face when OA said, oh yeah, we got more than 1,000 computer systems that run across this state, and consternation. Department of Mental Health doesn't talk to DESE, doesn't talk to this one, doesn't talk to that one. Talking to the Lieutenant Governor about the Department of Revenue, COBOL in 1978, and told me I think there were 2 people, maybe 3 people left in the entire state of Missouri who know how to program that, and one of them that they had relied on previous years has died. That's a really slender thread to be hanging something, a system on that is that big, and it touches and concerns every Missourian out here. Same thing goes for CMS, 40% of our budget going into a mainframe that was first programmed with Fortran in 1981. So I know we're throwing lots of money at this particular problem. The problem is, how do we benchmark our process? How do we benchmark our progress when we're doing this? And those of you can, and I'm not a computer person by any stretch of the imagination, but when I talk to folks and they say, oh, yeah, it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years to implement a particular system, some I'm aware of are 8 to 10, they're obsolete by the time they're implemented. So we need to basically have a process in place to benchmark where we're at, that we're spending our money wisely, have some subject matter experts alongside to say, yeah, this is a really good idea, or this isn't such a good idea. And I just had an experience here a little bit earlier with a $25 million appropriation for something, and I hear from other folks that, well, you know, that's a lot, and maybe it's a lot more than it actually should be, but we don't know enough as legislators to sit there, go inside those numbers and pick that thing apart to say, hey, here's a constituent element, here's something that needs to be looked at, here's something that's great, here's something that isn't so great. And again, as subject matter experts, we're not. This is a way to shorten that learning curve to make sure that we, as stewards of the people's money, are getting the best bang for buck out of the IT backbone of this state. And that is what this bill is designed to do. And I'll take any questions.
Representative, thank you. I want to make one comment on it. That's something I found out quickly. I didn't know when I came up here 6 years ago. It's just how far behind we are with our computer systems and how it prevents us from doing some things that would make state government much more effective for the people and take care of a lot of the issues that probably a lot of the representatives get calls on about state government and some of the inefficiencies that we have. And so I think it's one of the more important things we're going to do with some of those monies is to try to bring us into the 21st century and make us more efficient. So I'm glad to see this bill come forward.
You know, and part of the discussion that led to this bill was with OA, and was told that basically a third of the computers out there are cloud compatible now. A third are sort of hybrids. Some parts yes, some parts no. A third aren't compatible at all. And those are the biggest systems that have been around the longest time. So we've got a lot of work to do as a state to bring us into the 21st century, literally and figuratively, when it comes to the IT backbone. And that's what this is designed to do, is to get at that. So we, as appropriators and policymakers, can get the best, possible out there. a lot of money out there doesn't mean we solve the problem just by throwing money at it. We haven't.
I agree. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other discussion on House Bill 2583? Representative Young,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To inquire.
proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I like your bill. I like all of the bills you've presented here today. I, too, have had the honor of serving on a task force recently. It was the Missouri Rights for Victims of Sexual Assault to sort of update and improve those rights. So there's a lot of work that goes into what the task force does, or at least the one that I served on did. I was wondering, do you have any idea of whether or not the General Assembly tends to actually receive those recommendations and findings with great joy?
Well, there's a loaded question. It depends. Sorry, lawyer it. It depends on basically what the recommendations look like. So if the recommendations are realistic, and what we try to do with the broadband task force was to put things out there and say, okay, this is what we need to do. And part of that, we didn't have a statewide discussion about digital navigators at all. None. We're having that talk. We're talking more about affordability than we ever have before. We're talking about simple access. Rural areas, it means I don't have it at all, but it means something different in the urban core. It means something in the suburbs. I can't get at it because I can't afford it. And that's something that is bound up inextricably in what we do. So if we issue a good report, we have a good process, we're going to get good results out of that. And that basically, people self-identify. These are things they want to be a part of. And my experience has been folks who get into this really get into this. And they mean it. They understand the policy implications, budget implications, all of that. So the better report you have, the better process you have, the better results you're going to get. So the answer is it depends, but I think we're going to err on the side of caution. People who get into this really enjoy it. We get some pretty good things out of these.
Yeah, I'd have to comment there. There is a lot of work, and the people that I worked with on this task force were really passionate about what we were doing, and so hopefully, the General Assembly will receive it with that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, lady.
Representative Banger, proceed.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback a little bit about what you said, receiving calls from constituents, and a lot of those issues could be resolved if our computer systems were up to date. I know a call that I get at least 3 or 4 times a week is about expired license plates and the tags that are on the cars. And it's my understanding if we can get our computer systems up to par, that issue will be eliminated or much relieved. So I'm thrilled to hear that we're looking at all of that. And I can't believe we're still running off COBOL. I remember COBOL, so I guess I must be old. 10 rem, I think is how you started before you started putting the coding in there. But yeah, that's amazing that we're still running off COBOL. So I think this would be a great task force, and I think it's going to help everybody in our state. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, lady.
Representative Person.
You were saying that there were 3 people in the state that knew COBOL or Fortran 4. Was it just a COBOL?
I think it was COBOL.
Okay, now that is
Fortran's got 5 or 6.
okay. So I would presume that these are people that are already employed by the state. Those folks.
That's my understanding. Folks are basically on standby or whatever the process is to when there are problems with that. And considering how much DOR, to your point, does every day, if they had been able, I think back to unemployment, so everybody went on unemployment basically at the same time. If you had cloud computing, you wouldn't have had the computers crashing. They crashed all over the place. I don't know how many people got those phone calls from all over Kingdom Come for as long as we did, but pretty much all of us. So, that's something that's systemic. Once we upgrade the technology, then that problem should take care of itself, but we're just not there yet.
I got you. So basically this new task force, if you will, would just employ some new people just to do that.
Basically, it would be to review the processes that are in place to make sure they make sense from a monetary standpoint. Fiscally, we appropriate a lot of money for technology that, frankly, we don't always understand. And this basically helps us shorten the learning curve as appropriators to be able to understand that much, much better.
Great. And actually, yes, I am definitely for the bill. The thing that raises an eyebrow, even before you presented this bill, I thought such a faction or group or department, what have you, already existed in the state. The fact that we don't have one, I'm like, why don't we? I'm more or less jealous because I didn't think of the idea, but but until I get a good one, yes, I support yours.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Representative Gregory, proceed.
So I do have to say I enjoy sitting next to you in budget and seeing all the mad notes you're scribbling down and emails. But it sounds like you're to a point with some of the technology stuff that I've gotten to where things should be easier. Is that probably a correct one with this task force of trying to find easier solutions to these problems and easier solutions for the computers to talk together? And is that what you're really trying to drive through on this one?
Absolutely. Yes.
And efficiency comes from that. And why can't one computer system talk to another computer system when people go in and sign up and give you all your information to one department, but yet you go to another department, you have to do the exact same thing, right?
Correct. And we don't have what we call a fungible document, basically, that one size fits all because the computer systems take different documentation. So, there are a lot of smart folks in here who know more about this than I do. Writing the code, whatever, but the fact that the matter is cloud computing is here. It's not going anywhere. We need to accelerate the pace into that space. And that also has some cybersecurity aspects to it as well. So when we talk about silos in a farming context, it means something good. We talk about silos in computing context, it's really bad. And that's what we've got over here, silos across 16 different departments that don't talk to each other. And that's just something we need to get away from that.
And in your opinion, a likable finding coming out of this would be some type of computer system to where every single department could communicate with each other to make interactions for citizens of the great state of Missouri smoother.
Seamless.
I like it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none. Any witnesses to testify in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, Ross Lean with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As you can tell, we're big fans of task force at the Chamber. We believe improving the state's IT system will allow businesses to better utilize and access all the resources that the state has to offer. So we're happy to support. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Any other witnesses to testify in support? Any witnesses to testify in opposition? Any witnesses for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that will conclude our hearing on House Bill 2583.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, committee.
And at this time, I'm going to let Vice Chairman Gregory take over.
All right, so now we'll hold a hearing on House Bill 2190, sponsored by yours truly, the chairman of the committee, Representative Henderson. And so, Representative, once you get your folder opened up down there, proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that I did last year. We got it through committee unanimously. We're ready to go to the floor, still working on some things. Basically, just in a nutshell, what it's wanting to do is try to make it easier for our students or even teachers to go on to do things such as work study, on-the-job training, job shadowing, internships, clinicals, practicums, cooperative projects, industry-led service learning projects. Like in my area, right now, we've had a group of businesses that have worked with all the local schools. And we were in a meeting 2 weeks ago, I think, and they were going, I need 2 interns for next summer that I want to hire if they do a good job. They're trying to get them their junior year and then hire them after their senior year full-time. And they're going ahead and bring them in. But they take a little bit of a risk if those kids, because one of them is a lot of it is machinist work, where there is some risk to that there could be something happen, especially when kids are not, they're a little more likely, I think, than us to maybe bypass some of the safety protocols or have an injury or something. And so what this is going to do is it would give a little bit of limited liability to them. Now, in the end, last year, Music had agreed that they would offer the schools a rider who they insure 98% of the school districts. And we're still trying to work that out. I got a call from Music on the way up because I thought that was still a done deal, but they want to talk a little more. I still want to have the hearing today, and then I'm going to talk with Music about that. But if Music offers the schools a rider, then some of this liability that comes off the businesses would be on the Music insurance, which insures the schools. And then that would give them the ability to maybe push more kids out there to do some of these. I think it's something around 60% of our kids take career tech programs, And a lot of these businesses, at one time with No Child Left Behind, we thought every child had to go to a four-year university. We found out that was a huge mistake. And I see a few heads, because some of you know that worked in that field. That was a big mistake. Not every child needs to go to college. And a lot of these kids can go with no student loan debt, could go do these practicums, internships. And we even in our area have some of the teachers doing externships in the summer there at those businesses. And they're paying them to come in and work for, say, 4 to 6 weeks in the summer. And if we can maybe make it easier for this to happen, I think that's good for kids. And I think it's good for the businesses who are starving for these workers, and workers who they already know will actually come to work every day and will do their job each and every day and maybe like their job. And so that's why we're bringing this bill forward. And with that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I gave you a promotion. Mr. Chairman, I answer any questions.
I don't know how the current speaker would feel about that promotion, but so I'm going to go on a little bit of a train here. To familiarize, what is a rider when you've heard a rider? I think I know, but just for everyone else to know.
Basically, the school can come up and for a certain fee can have this specified piece of insurance that would cover these students who go out and do these internships or these clinicals or these job shadowing.
So for farmers with crop insurance, you buy your general crop insurance, and I can go get a rider for hail damage.
Correct. It's
Okay.
similar to that.
And you talk about risks associated with some of these internships and careers when they go out and work. Would you say there's in your background is administration in schools? Is that correct?
That's correct.
At what level? High school?
Yes.
Okay. So did you ever have to purchase any kind of riders for like your sports teams or anything like that?
Yes, you always do. Yes.
So it's not like a new concept.
Not a new concept at all. We've done that in the past in fact, you have to have every child have that insurance. I forgot what it's called now, when they're going to play football and basketball and stuff in case they're injured.
Yeah, perfect. I think that where you're going at with this is a great idea. I think until you're in the management capacity of something like on my farm, when I hired some high school kids to come work for me and actually talk to some of these kids now, what are you going to do? You're going to go to college? And you hear the answers of, no, I am not made for college. I realized that in high school. I just want to go right to work. And so I think driving at this to develop the actual workforce in this committee is a perfect fit for this bill. So I'll be quiet now if anyone else has any inquiries. Representative Bangert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question. So there's no insurance coverage on any of these kids right now when they're going out for these internships or externships or,
There would be, and it would be on the businesses right now. So what we're trying to do is they would still be responsible if they're negligent. Like, give you an example, they don't have the yellow lines around some of these machines. We've all seen those around it. They're not meeting the safety protocols. They still have responsibility. But we're trying to take some off of them to encourage businesses to want to do more of this with these workers, which I think is good for them, but I think it's great for the students to get out there and be able to do this. So yes, there is already some of that. This would take some of that liability off of it, and the school would take some of it with that rider.
Okay, so I'm just asking questions because I don't know anything about this. So any business that would have a student come in would have to provide the insurance now, but with this, the school district will be able to
Well, they would
purchase
still
a rider.
have insurance. The business would still have to have insurance, but this would take some of the liability off of them, a
Okay.
limited amount.
So at the present time, though, businesses do have to have insurance at this time.
I would think that they would have to, yes.
Okay. I just want to verify that. I find it amazing that the district doesn't have insurance on them. But I can see that would be very costly. So I think this is a great idea that you'll be able to help them out and encourage the businesses to take more kids in.
And I think that's why some kids, they like you go through a career center, they do this already. But on your average students, they probably don't as much. And so we're just trying to make sure we're filling in all those gaps to encourage people to do it more and not be afraid. We do a lot of things in this country because we're afraid we could be sued. I think everybody would agree with that. And so we're trying to maybe fill those gaps where people don't use that as a reason not to do these.
Well, I think it's great. I think it's a great idea. So I like it. Thank you.
Representative Walsh-Moore,
To inquire.
proceed.
Thank you. Hello. I like this bill a lot. I know, like you said, I think it's just for my understanding, we're just filling some gaps, right? As the chairman said, you have insurance already on your traveling sports teams, on field trips and things like that. I'm a little bit familiar with that. This was much more of a personal discussion because I attended a parochial school. And so we were much more intimate, and the insurance information was always much more pertinent than probably the average student of a public school would know. So this is just kind of filling that gap. So if student is injured on their way to the job site or on the job site, we're just kind of filling that gap. Just like if, you're at an away soccer game, you're covered under the same.
Correct. That's all we're trying to do.
All right. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, are there any witnesses in support of House Bill 2190?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, Ross Lean with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, here to support this bill. We think this bill will make it just a little bit easier for businesses to offer some more of these internships, some more of these on-the-job experiences for students, and feel a little bit more comfortable expanding some of those programs. So we're happy to support this bill and happy to take any questions.
I'm going to go ahead and ask one. Do you have any kind of information on the probability of a kid that does an internship, what the likelihood if they get an internship in that business, what the likelihood of them actually going into that industry is, or any data like that?
I don't have any with me. I'm happy to follow up with that. I would say a lot of our businesses that are seeking interns and apprenticeships and things like that, they want to hire those students. Once they graduate, they're already experienced in the specific programs that they're working in. So it's less training expense for the company if they can get an intern, train them up, and then hire them full-time afterwards. So I think businesses would prefer to do it that way, but I don't have any stats off the top of my head.
It was just a random thought I'd had. Thank you. Representative Sharp.
To inquire.
Proceed.
Well, thank you for bringing this forward and the support. I do room with the representative from Wardsville, and his expression at times is this is a trial attorney's dream. And so I'm in that vein, I'm kind of asking who is the primary insurance, or, a lot of people will write insurance if we're not the primary, that there's somebody else. So who would be that if somebody goes out and interns, student goes out and interns at a workplace, is this intended to be the backup insurance, or is it intended to be the primary, or has that been addressed?
Yep, I'll let you take that one.
Okay, I think the business still has an insurance. I think it's, if you look here, let's go back to one part in here where it says, an employer who accepts a secondary student and work-based learning program shall not be subject to civil liability for any claims arising from the student's negligent act or omission. In other words, if the student was out there doing something, you see that section there? And that's where that rider we're talking about would help in that area. In other words, put it simple, students out there doing something they know they shouldn't be doing. They get themselves injured. That's what we're covering. We're not covering for the business is still liable for themselves and for providing an OSHA recognized and a clean environment and an environment where it's safe. But if the student, based on their age, because they're 16 or 17, maybe get a little, do some things you wouldn't normally get out of adults, and something were to happen, that's where this would come into play, if that makes sense.
Well, you see what I mean.
I do.
Kind of like when you buy baseball insurance in the summer for summer leagues, you can buy it because they're all subordinating, hoping the primary insurance will pick it up.
I think it comes down to line 2, starting on line 18, section 2 there, on what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for this witness? All right, thank you. Are there any other witnesses in support of this bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stacy Priest, I'm representing Aligned. Aligned is a group of business leaders that have committed themselves to a strong education system and seeing that students are ready for careers, ready for anything actually that would come after high school. So when students leave high school, it's critical that they've been given every possible opportunity to gain the knowledge and skills, not only that will prepare them for the work in the workplace, but the environment of the workplace. What are the expectations, the responsibilities professionally? Aligned started in Kansas City, and they still have a strong presence in Kansas City. And in the Kansas City region alone, there are 80,000 students, more than 80,000 students, participating in a program called Real World Learning. It's an industry education partnership between schools and businesses in the region. You may be familiar with other career education programs such as CAPS, which stands for Center for Advanced Professional Studies. They have those in St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbia, Lincoln County, Springfield, and St. Charles. As more and more students get involved in career education and pursue work-based learning experiences, the school leaders are working diligently to identify business partners for these experiences. And occasionally they have encountered employers that are hesitant to host students because they are concerned with liability. And of course we want to protect students. Everyone wants to protect students. But this can be, the insurance we're talking about can be easily added to as we've talked about, the school district's insurance that covers that. And in fact, I was looking at the fiscal note, and there was a district that responded in the fiscal note and said that they already have coverage for these possible liabilities. And they've never had that type of liability claim, don't see any fiscal impact from that proposal. So many of them do already carry this. It is part of anything that a student would do as an activity. We just want to make it clear that that's who would be expected to, particularly in unpaid learning opportunities. So no one is exempt from willful misconduct or gross negligence. And so this would really help students as we provide literally tens of thousands of students the chance to experience work-based learning. We just want to make sure that there aren't any hurdles as they move through that process. And so with that, Aligned is happy to support House Bill 2190. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Are there any questions for this witness? Representative Young, is that?
Thank you. To inquire.
Proceed.
Just a quick question. Did you say there were 80,000 children in Missouri that's participating in these sort of?
So it's actually it's in the Kansas City region. So in Missouri and Kansas, all of these districts that are participating in real world learning, that's the number that we have from last year, that they have that many students that they would like to be able to get into these experiences. That's how many high school students we're talking about.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions? All right, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Is there anyone else in support?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Mitch Davis with the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. We're in support of this legislation as it provides students more skill opportunity and career exploration.
All right, any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone else in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Jack Gamble here on behalf of Greater St. Louis Incorporated, and we just want to go on record in support.
I see you didn't. Did you bring a witness form or fill one out online?
I'll do it right now.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in support of this bill? Okay. Any witnesses here in opposition?
My name is Mark Moreland, and I'm the immediate past president of the Missouri Association of Trial Attorneys. We're opposed to the bill because the bill, as has been described, won't do what they've said. It's not written that way. So I want you to turn to the second page of the bill, starting on line 14, which is section 2. An employer who accepts a secondary student in a work-based learning program shall not be subject to civil liability for any claim arising from the student's negligent act or omission. How that is written means this: if the student's negligence hurts a third party, then the business will not be responsible to the damage that they caused the third party. Let me give you a quick example. Some student is being taught heating and air conditioning, and he negligently doesn't fix the furnace right, and the furnace blows up, and there's a fire. The business is immune under this section because it was the student's negligent act that damaged the third party. This has nothing to do with protecting the student. If the student was negligent and fell up the steps, he can't sue the employer now because he's negligent. It was his fault, right? You sue somebody when it's their fault that you got hurt. So the employer doesn't face liability for the student's negligent act. The student won't be able to sue the employer. What this does is it shields the employer when the employer injures a third person. Another quick example, you have an intern, they're waving cars into the parking lot for some event, and they wave a car across traffic, the car gets plowed. The business is immune because you shielded them from the negligent act of the student they hired. This is not written appropriately. It doesn't do what you have been told that it does. In addition, on the first page, it simply says that school districts may purchase insurance contracts. So, in the idea of cost, right, when school boards meet about costs, they simply may choose not to purchase insurance. Insurance is expensive. And I don't know what writer music is planning to write, but I'm sure that it's not to cover the furnace blowing up and damaging someone's home or business. That's not the writer that they're looking to do, okay? So the bill as written does not do what it says. Immunity is for negligent acts is bad generally. It's bad public policy. Why? Because it encourages a lack of safety protocols. You don't need the yellow strips around the machine because your negligent act, you can't get sued. Not a problem. It's not a willful act. It's not a wanton act. You're not deliberately hurting somebody. So it encourages a lack of training, a lack of supervision, because again, you're trying to limit your liability from the student's negligent act. It tempts employers to place students in jobs to which they are ill-suited and not trained. And finally, I think we have these programs to teach students about personal responsibility, being responsible for the things that they do, showing up on time, trying to do a good job. And yet, what does the business group try to do in this instance? Shirk their responsibility. When a negligent act is committed by one of their employees or one of the students in their control, they say, no, 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 it's not me. That doesn't send the right message. It sends the wrong message. Making someone responsible for a negligent act is the way we teach responsibility, and it's good policy. And finally, we don't teach. It's bad policy to allow people who were injured due to the negligent act of someone else to go uncompensated. And why is that? It's not because we want to create some windfall. It's not a trial attorney's dream. It's because we've said for a long time that if someone else hurts you, then you ought not bear all that injury alone. You ought not bear lost wages or the loss of property damage alone. That we spread that risk out by having people have insurance, and then you get compensated for your loss. That's been a good public policy literally for centuries. And I would submit to you the bill is poorly drafted. It doesn't do what it says. And by the way, somebody talked about, incentivizing people to bring in students. I heard 80,000 people 80,000 students in the Kansas City area alone. Doesn't sound like they need a lot of incentive. I hear they can't wait for somebody to graduate from high school so they can hire them full time. Doesn't sound like they need a lot of incentive. Certainly not this one. Certainly not this bill.
Thank you for being here today. Any inquiries of this witness? Representative Walsh-Moore, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a version of this bill that that the trial attorneys would approve of? Basically, some additional liability on behalf of the school district as opposed to the business. Is there a version that you would be comfortable with?
We're happy to talk to anyone, the sponsor or anyone on the committee, about various versions of a bill.
Thank you.
But we're opposed to immunity.
Sure.
I mean, immunity is simply bad policy.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for this witness? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in opposition to this bill? Is there anyone for informational purposes only? Okay, seeing none, this concludes the hearing on this bill and concludes the hearing on workforce development.